have the presentation. I have points where people can just, they can stop and talk about it.
Hello, hello, and welcome. We'll give just a few more minutes for others to join. If you would, drop your name in the chat. We know where you're joining us from. That would be lovely. And we'll get started in just another minute. Okay. I should have kept the music going, I guess, huh? Oh, I know we've got a lot to cover, and I don't want to steal a minute from this rich conversation. So we'll go ahead and get started. And if we need to ground people when they join us, we can. I know sometimes it's hard with littles that you're trying to get them down and they don't always go down when you want them to. My name is Marie Boone Clark, and I am the founder of Birthing the Magic Collaborative, and I serve as executive director. So excited to have this conversation tonight. It's something that's been in the works for a while and something that I think is very much needed. And I'm even more excited to partner with Susan Lowe for this conversation. I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with her. And for you that have not read Susan's bio, if the little screen was going too fast, let me share a little bit with you about Susan's accomplishments. Susan is an experienced therapist. She specializes in perinatal mental health. Susan has over a decade of clinical supervision experience in which she guides professionals as well as individuals toward improved mental health. She's a highly regarded speaker, trainer, consultant, and she leads organizational training on mental health, cultural humility, and maternal health. Before establishing her private practice, Susan spent 8 years working with Indigenous and Native American populations in Los Angeles. In her work, Susan combines a passion for mental health with a practical and informed approach, creating a safe space for families, for the families that she serves. Susan has 2 grown children, and she's the proud grandmother of 3 granddaughters. She enjoys reading, attending meditation retreats, and she cherishes her role as Nana to her grands who are 16, 13, and 2.5. Susan, thank you so much for being here. I know I did not give honor to all that you've accomplished. If I left anything out, please let's correct me or correct, because I just know that you have done so much in this field. And so I want to open the floor to you and welcome.
You're welcome. Well, I want to thank you for having me. Anytime I get a chance to speak with mamas and people in this profession, like yourself, it's a pleasure. This is my gift. This is my gift. So if you don't mind, I will go ahead and start sharing my screen. Um, I'm hoping that you have somebody who's monitoring the chat, because when I'm in this mode, I am not able to see the chat, but I will stop from time to time. And just give me, just verbally let me know if you can see my screen.
We can.
Thank you. All right. So let me see if I can. Do you see a bar in the middle of it or no? I'm gonna assume that it's not. So you already introduced me, but I'll tell you just a little bit more about myself. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I currently reside in California, and that's where I'm licensed at. I'm a perinatal mental health specialist, certified. So I work with mamas that are going through the reproductive journey. I hold my master's degree in marriage and family therapy, but I also attended one of the very few schools that have an African American family specialization. So my training is from a cultural lens, working with African American families and other people of color. I work currently directly with clients, and the reason I say that is because I find that in my spaces that I'm in, I find a lot of trainers that do this, but they're not necessarily doing direct services with clients. So I'm still currently working with clients in my practice. So general mental health issues, but also things related to grief and loss. That would be pregnancy, grief and loss, loss of an infant, adjusting to new parenting, relationship conflicts that people have when a new baby comes, all kinds of things that impact a family around birth. And like you said, I do provide trainings to professionals who work with Black and Brown people in our area so that they can be better well trained. So today we are going to explore Black maternal mental health. I'm hoping that by the time this is over, the attendees will have a better understanding of what's typical or common, normal when after a baby is born, but also understanding where there are some mental health concerns, where there might be an opportunity to seek support, to ask for help, to ask for guidance. To explore cultural influences, and this would be a conversational piece with us, because I want to know, we all come from different areas of the country and have had different experiences. So it's helpful for me to understand what some of the experiences that the attendees have had. And so that would be part of our discussion. And always developing self-care practices, things that help us stay grounded, activities that help us refuel our soul, that have a sense of connection, and then creating support. And the fact that people are here means you're already connected with support. So I want to talk about, just in general, the nature of motherhood, the nature of giving birth. Once we have a child, it impacts all of our life domains. It impacts our physical, um, not only being pregnant and all that goes with the body changes with that, but also recovery after the baby's born. The idea of our body looks different. Sometimes we now have to overcome challenges related to body image and things like stretch marks, or the boobs don't sit the way they used to, or things like that. Um, then we have our mental health and our emotional well-being is also uh, impacted, right? Not just for ourselves, but for our family members and our household members, our partners, other children, and other household members. Our mental health is impacted in many, many different ways. And we'll talk more about that as this presentation continues. And then socially, um, when a baby's in the mix, we often have challenges in relationships, not just with our partners, but sometimes with our family members. I definitely work with clients where uh, the, the in-laws or the grandparents have one opinion of how they should do things, and they want to do things differently, and it creates a lot of stress and challenges. And then with our family and friends, we don't have as much time, we don't have the energy, we focus on our babies. Um, I've worked with clients where they notice that now they're the first one in their group to have a baby. So moving from being a single person to a married person, excuse me, to a mama, has now impacted having things in common with people that they used to spend a lot of time with. Spiritually, having a baby impacts us sometimes in very positive ways, sometimes in ways where people feel more connected, like to the circle of life, like more connected to the circle of life. But sometimes people are often challenged by feelings of abandonment or rethinking some of their spiritual beliefs. And when I say spiritual, I mean that which makes us feel connected to something higher than ourselves, something bigger than ourselves. And so sometimes if a person has had a traumatic birth or their life situations are very stressful, and they may be having some mental health challenges, they may feel challenged, like, is God still with me? Things like that. And then, of course, it affects our finances. Babies are expensive. They're little people, but they come with a lot of expenses. So this would also include work or employment, decisions of going back to work. Do I stay home? Childcare issues, family leave, paternal leave, those kinds of issues that come along with that. So the myth, we're supposed to be happy, right? And most of the time we are. But when people are experiencing some mental health challenges as a result of giving birth, we can be happy that we had a baby and still hold that it's very challenging, that sometimes it's very difficult, um, and sometimes it's hard to manage. So I just want to leave a space here where we know that it's okay. It's okay to not be happy all the time. And if one were to speak to a lot of mamas, they'd find like that's probably very common also. So what are some of the common adjustments and stresses for new mamas? And anybody that's on this call that's had a baby or even adopted a baby or has been knows that is sleep deprivation, there's a physical recovery, sometimes lactation and breastfeeding are challenging. Um, and that's not a little issue, right? There's could be a lot of stress around feeding a baby. We have hormonal changes that impact our moods, that have us maybe going in and out of mood swings, like I mentioned earlier, body concerns, a shift in identity. I was a single person, now I'm a mama. What does that mean? Who am I now? Some people actually, it really challenges their sense of who am I today. Learning to balance new responsibilities. How do we keep the house clean, making meals, working, who picks up the baby from daycare or from, there's so much that goes into balancing new responsibilities with a new person in our life. Even if you've had other children, it's still going to be new and different. There's still new responsibilities to balance. Being emotionally vulnerable, sensitive, is one of the things that also occurs, but it's normal. A relationship changes. That could be positive. In a lot of cases, it can be challenging, and it requires parents are now new, they're different, and it requires a new routine and levels of communication to be able to navigate some of those challenges. There's sometimes a feeling of isolation. Mamas are with babies all day long, and sometimes they just want to talk to an adult, have an adult conversation, be able to rest. We already mentioned some of the financial stresses. And then there's the idea of the expectations versus the reality. You know, most people are focused on a, a baby shower or gender revealing, and not necessarily as prepared for what life is when they actually have a baby. Unless you work with a doula or a midwife that helped you to think things out and plan those things out, oftentimes people are very surprised that that's something that's new, that they didn't realize that there would be so many little things that they didn't know they'd have to deal with. Obviously, there's concerns for baby's health, meaning if you're a new mom and your baby sneezes or coughs, it's like, what do I do? How do I do this? This might be some anxieties around that, but that's also natural as we learn. Last time I checked, babies did not come with a manual. And even if they did, each of them is an individual. They'll all be different. And our limited time for ourselves. So these are some of the stressors. So this presentation is about mental health. And so why is it important that we address the mental health issues? I'm hoping that as we continue on with this conversation, that you can see that early detection leads to interventions, meaning if you start noticing there's some things going on where you don't feel like yourself, and you start noticing, oh, maybe I should seek help for this, we get treated a lot easier, a lot faster, and it'll make our life better. These things are treatable with support, and it just makes life easier for you, for your partner, for your family. Addressing symptoms can ease the strain on relationships with your partner, your children, and extended family. I also want to share that statistics show that if a mama is feeling postpartum anxiety or postpartum depression, sometimes partners can have symptoms too, and they can actually have postpartum depression and anxiety also. So people often think that this is completely related to women, but men have their own experience of what bringing a new baby into the household means to them. It's important to know that if there are anything going on, and we'll get into what the types of mental health issues are related to postpartum, to know that you're not to blame, that sometimes it's hormonal changes, it's life stressors, and we just have to learn some coping skills and some strategies around managing them, as well as just having a better understanding. If we understand what's going on, we tend to fare better. And you're not alone. You know, there are many, many, many women that are challenged by postpartum issues. So knowing the signs and seeking help and really finding your support is going to be very important. Are there any questions at this point? No, we're good. I can't, I'll just, okay. All right.
No, there aren't any in the chat yet.
I see. Thank you.
We're all digesting.
All right, so I'm going to share this video. It's a little over 1 minute, but I hope some of you have a little pen and pencil or something that's near you. I want you to notice in this video, what are some of the things that you can relate to? These are some of the common stressors that happen with women after they have a baby, not necessarily mental health stressors, just stressors that come with having a baby. And just know what you can relate to, things that you experience, or even what emotions it brings up, if any, when you watch it. Okay, here we go.
Pressure pushing down on me, pressing down on you. No cure is for under pressure that brings a building down, splits a family in two, puts people on the streets. Hey there, hey there. Pressure pushing down on me. Pressure under pressure.
So I would like this to be interactive, so don't look like I'm just speaking to a screen. Can anybody share in the chat what they saw that they could relate to? Oh.
Terry,
Ah,
nursing. I do see it.
yeah, I stopped the screen so I can, yeah. So Terry, she was nursing. I don't know about you, the first time I saw this and the milk spilled, that was the thing that was like, ah, clutching my pearls here. Like for me, that was like, oh my God, because I was a nursing mom too at some point. So yeah. Anybody else notice anything else that they could relate to? Everything pumping, spilling the milk. I wanted to cry. Thank you. Thank you for being, thank you. Thank you for being really honest about that, because even though it's only a minute, there's so much going on. And when you look at it, that's what new motherhood looks like. It's hard. We can do hard things, but it's hard. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I see that Terry's saying she cried when she did that. So thank you all for sharing. I appreciate that. Okay. Okay, so the things that were in there, we saw a mother with twins. We saw the nighttime feeding, the endless nighttime feedings, all the time, being exhausted and fatigued. Did you notice what the woman was wearing adult diapers? Sometimes when we talk about reality versus expectations versus reality, like that is a reality that people are like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that's what I needed. We saw the lactation and nursing challenges, the spilling of the milk. Mamas, I don't know if you noticed, the mama was walking out the door and she had a leak. And now she has to go back and change her shirt. That's a challenge. Body image issues, stretch marks, not being able to snap back the way we thought we would. Okay, I think you all should. So one of the things that I really want to help people understand is the difference between baby blues and postpartum depression. I think it's important to understand what's typical, normal, common, and what isn't, so that you know where you're at. where you are at on this journey. So postpartum, baby blues, let's start with baby blues, is something that 80% of all new mothers experience. It's a result of hormonal changes, and it typically lasts no more than 2 weeks. It starts a few days after the birth of the baby. The common symptoms are mood swings, anxiety, sadness, irritability, crying for no reason, difficulty sleeping. But eventually it kind of goes away, and feeling overwhelmed. And it does, and it's just the body's adjusting. A lot has gone on. You've grown a whole human being. And so this is what baby blues. So the key things are to note that it only lasts about 2 weeks. The difference with postpartum depression is that postpartum depression, it lasts much longer. It can start anytime within the first year. It doesn't have to be in the first month, or it can be 2, 3, 4 months later. It's a persistent feeling of sadness, hopelessness, and worthlessness. So what that looks like is people feeling like, I'm not a good mother. Sometimes it comes to thoughts like, my baby doesn't deserve me. It can be really hard to hear how people are feeling when they're feeling that. They feel defeated, they feel guilty, they feel ashamed. It can look like intense irritability or anger. And oftentimes in African American communities, our depression does not necessarily always look like sadness and sleeping all day. Sometimes it looks like we're mad for no reason. We can even be rageful, and we don't understand why. It's irritable, but it's like irritable for no reason. We sometimes feel difficulty bonding with the baby. So what this could look like is, my baby doesn't like me. I've heard that. Or I feel numb. Yeah, I'm washing the baby, I'm changing diapers, I'm feeding the baby, but I don't feel connected to my baby. Then there might be thoughts of harming oneself or harming the baby. Just, we're talking thoughts, not action, but there might be that. Sleep disturbances, either oversleeping or not sleeping at all. So it's insomnia or oversleeping. And then there's a lack of interest. There's things that you used to enjoy doing, and when you do them, you don't enjoy them anymore. If anybody's not feeling like themselves, and that's usually how, when people come into my space and they say, I just don't feel like myself, something's wrong, and they just can't put a finger on it. It's like, I'm just, something's off here. That's kind of what it would look like. So you want to notice any of those things. Now, oftentimes when people hear about perinatal anxiety and mood disorders, they always hear postpartum depression. They don't really know that there's other mood challenges that people experience as a result of the hormone changes. And so one of them, which I actually see a lot more often than depression, or a combination of both, is postpartum anxiety. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. So what is it? It's excessive worry or fear after giving birth. And we're talking about just like excessive, sometimes even to the point where some mamas might have anxiety attacks or panic attacks. They feel really, really nervous constantly. Everything's a worry, but it's not just a little. There's a normal amount of worrying when you have a new baby, especially if it's your first time. That's normal, the anxiety of just, it's new. But this is when it gets to the point where it's interfering with daily life. Racing thoughts, fast heartbeat, irritability, trouble sleeping, and constantly feeling that something bad will happen, like the other foot's going to drop, the other shoe's going to drop, right? There's always something. So if a person is feeling that, if you're feeling that, you might want to seek support. Talk to somebody and maybe have an assessment, just to see if this is a real serious concern or not. The other thing, another one is postpartum obsessive compulsive disorder. So a lot of times when we think of OCD, we often think about somebody repetitively doing things, turning the lights off and on a million times, or turning around circles, or there's all kinds of rituals people have to have a feeling of being safe. But in postpartum obsessive disorder, it's usually around the baby. So somebody might feel like, the baby's, nobody can touch my baby, you can't kiss my baby, because they're going to get germs. And then they'll wash their clothes 12 times, or they'll keep washing the baby bottles like 100 times because it's never going to be clean enough. It looks like scary thoughts sometimes too. And scary thoughts would be like fear of harming the baby. And then we can talk more about that, but I'll share with you the distinction between this and postpartum psychosis, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So if your thoughts are getting very troublesome and you're feeling really worried about the baby and doing things or not doing things around the baby, we want us to get support for that. Then there's postpartum post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. So oftentimes this happens when somebody's had a traumatic birth. Maybe they have a baby in the NICU. Sometimes those experiences can be extremely scary. It can feel like it could have been a situation where you could have lost your life or the baby could have lost their lives. And so it's just a very traumatic experience. And so as a result, just like other PTSDs that we know of, people will have flashbacks. They will have bad dreams, nightmares. They might want to avoid the doctor or the hospitals or the NICU. And they always feel on edge. They're hypervigilant, meaning they're looking over their shoulder and just really edgy. A person would want to seek support for that. Obviously, stressful situations like a traumatic birth they happen, right? And for a few weeks, people might feel some kind of way, but eventually it calms down. But if it doesn't, then we want to seek support. And then postpartum psychosis. This is a severe mental illness of hallucinations and delusions. And it's extremely dangerous. And it's something that the family members would probably notice first. The psychosis piece is where people are seeing things that aren't there or hearing things that aren't there. And I have to tell you, it's very rare. I put it in here. It's very rare because 1 to 2 out of every 1,000 births, it's very rare. The ones we hear about are the ones that end up on the news because somebody usually killed their baby. So, but all psychosis doesn't end in that. Many people get the support. If you are experiencing or notice this with somebody, you would want to get them to the hospital immediately. It can be managed with medication and talk therapy, but this is a 911 emergency. So I think it's just important to know that. So the difference between postpartum OCD and postpartum psychosis is postpartum OCD, a person will have a scary thought. I see myself throwing my baby over the balcony, but it's a scary thought. Like, it's a really scary thought. However, they know that there's something wrong with that. So what happens is most mamas will they just avoid these things. Where somebody with a psychosis, we're talking about delusion, hallucination, it might make sense to them, but everybody around them will know, no, that's not, there's nothing there. There's no sounds here. No, that doesn't make sense. So one example is many years ago, a woman named Andrea Yates, she drowned all her children, and that was psychosis. In her mind, she was baptizing them to heaven. So to her, it made sense. And so that, to me, is one of the biggest things that is a differential that it's helpful to understand about postpartum anxiety and mood disorders. So ways that we can, you know what, I'm going to stop sharing. Do we have any questions or anything that comes up from this part? Because I feel like that's a lot of information. All right, I don't see any. We can, of course, we can continue, and when we get to the end of this, that we can ask away. I'm here to answer any questions, but I just wanted to check in. Okay. So some of the ways we want to create space and decrease the stressors. Some of it is going to be obvious. It's physical, in the physical environment. Food, clothing, and shelter, are those stable? We oftentimes, women in our community are faced with other challenges that are just toxic stressors that are outside of just having a baby, there's other things. And so we just want to make sure that housing stability is there, or getting mamas connected with resources, that they're taking care of their nutritional needs, that they're taking care, their financial needs are being met, that they feel comfortable and safe in the spaces that they're in. And when I say also safety, I'm also going to mention even safety with intimate partner violence. Like if that's happening, we want to make sure that mamas get help to get out of situations that are dangerous and would give them greater stresses. And then emotional support. And this is where the support groups come in. This is where identifying people that you can talk to about anything. Who can you confide in? Like when I think about this, when I work with mamas and we do a postpartum plan, I start saying, I get a little bit more specific. I start saying, who do you call for, who helps you laugh? Who do you call that can pray with you? Who do you call when you say you need them to pick up something from the store and they'll drop it off? Who is your team? And if you don't have one, it's time to start thinking about that and start creating that. The next question, who's around you that respects you and supports you in ways that you feel supported, especially concerning the child, like care, but also time for yourself so that you can recover, so that you can physically recover well. Is it an auntie? Is it a friend? Is it a neighbor? Is it a church person? Is it somebody from your spiritual community? Is it a doula? Who is somebody that you can really just be yourself with and say what's on your mind? And then, do you know how to set boundaries? Because boundaries is part of self-care. And after we have a baby, we're exhausted. We might need to limit how much time people come, or even have boundaries like, if you come, can you help with the other little ones? Or can you help me clean up or straighten up a little bit? Or can you bring a meal? Or can you bring some groceries? Or sometimes we want to look to see who's in our area that can help us with these boundaries. And so when we're creating safe spaces, I have to commend everybody who's here, because this is one of the kind of supports that you need. It's being with Birthing the Magic Collective is it's a group that's giving you information so you can make informed decisions. It's hopefully you're finding it really helpful as you're navigating the journey to parenthood. So you'll want to continue to do that. I also recommend support groups, the Mommy and Me groups. So I have clients that do Mommy and Me yoga, or they connect with women that might have been at the birthing center that they've met, and they go for walks together, where they have an opportunity just to have adult conversation with other women who are experiencing very much the same thing. Support groups, postpartum support groups, there are many, and there are some specific for Black mamas, where you can just discuss some of the challenges that you're facing, maybe get some coping strategies, and just know that you're not alone. It's so important to develop community. Address any lactation or breastfeeding concerns, because having those can be very stressful. And learning how to ask for help. What comes up a lot for me with the mamas I work with is there are people around them that want to help, but they don't accept the help because we're strong Black women. And if I ask for help, then it means I'm weak. And that's not true. Being able to accept the help when it's offered to you is just important. So also delegating tasks, like I just mentioned earlier, maybe having somebody, hey, can you vacuum the living room rug for me when you come? Can you bring some soup for me when you come? And prioritizing your self-care. And we're going to talk more about that. So I would really like this to be somewhat interactive. So one of the things we wanted to look at when Marie and I spoke is some of the cultural factors. And it would be helpful for me if you could put it into the chat box, if you could type it in, or if you feel bold enough to be able to say it out in person, out loud, maybe Marie can unmute. What are some of the stigmas that you've seen in our community around mental health? And around motherhood, I would say not just around mental health, but also around motherhood. If you would put it in the chat. I'd like to know what are some of the things that you can think of. I'm going to go through, it's about 5 questions, I think. And if you put them in the chat, I'll come off and we can talk about that, or that can be part of our discussion afterwards. Next one. One of the chat. Yes, go ahead.
We have a stigma from someone in the chat, and she said, mental health, the faults in your genes or DNA.
Say that again.
Mental health, the faults in your genes or DNA.
What does that mean? Can she give me some clarification?
I'm waiting. I think one of the where I infer that to mean is that if I have mental health challenges, there are some faults, or there's a weakness in my DNA, or that it's genetic.
Gotcha.
But I'm waiting for this person to add a bit more to make sure that I'm interpreting. For example, quote, I've heard people say, well, it's in your family line. So it is what I was inferring.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And is there any data, Susan, that's like, if my mother suffered from postpartum depression or some of the more severe forms of maternal mental health, is there any data that says I have a higher likelihood, sort of like diabetes?
Yeah, if it runs in the family, it's a possibility. Just like, but it's not just with just like if grandma started menopause early, you may start menopause early, right? So there is some truth to that. One of the challenges I find that within our community, our parents don't talk about these things. So what happens is people will have these perinatal mood disorders, get help, and then they start talking about it. And then my auntie would say, well, yeah, I had that too. Or mama would say, oh yeah, I had that too. And they never knew, because if you knew about it in advance, it's something that you can prepare for. When I say prepare, you plan, like keeping the stressors down, and you'll pay attention to what's going on with your body, and you'll seek support earlier if that's what you're noticing. But in our community, we often don't talk about these things until after the fact. And it's like, well, gosh, if mama had it, and her sister, and nobody talked about it, now I can. That's why it's important to have these kinds of conversations. So we can say, hey, but also that we don't have to suffer in silence, that we can do something about it.
I love that. And that's a perfect segue to another comment in the field about the stigma around these types of experiences that we're, as the mom, we're made to feel inadequate, that we're unable to mother properly, that like, this is what you're literally made for, and then you can't do it right type of thing.
Mhm.
And that's often why, right? People aren't as open about discussing their experiences.
Yeah, that definitely happens. And there's a myth that, oh, because you had a baby, you automatically like your baby, you automatically bonded with your baby. For some people, that's not necessarily the case. And so just knowing that and being aware of that, it's important. Those When we have these stigmas, that's what I was saying about expectation versus reality. Well, you're a mama, well, you should know how to do this. Well, everybody else had to do this, you could do it too. And this is all true. We're all strong and we're capable, but if we're struggling and we're being challenged by something, that's not helpful. We need to go get support. And support can look like therapy. It can look like a support group. It could look like talking to other mamas. It can look like many different things, but what happens is a lot of women just suffer in silence. And then if it's real severe, they have those scary thoughts or those, maybe my baby would be better off without me thoughts that lead to suicide. And then what do we do if a mama is gone? It's important that we can begin to address those stigmas. I think about some of the celebrities that are talking about it. A lot of celebrities are talking about mental health, period. Taraji P. Henson, Big Sean, Charlemagne the God wrote a whole book about it. So that the stigma is being reduced in the Black community. I think more and more people are talking about it. Serena Williams had her very traumatic birth experience, and she talks about how it's challenged her. So I think the more conversations we have that normalizes it and realizes that you're not alone, we don't have to suffer, and we can get on the other side of that fairly easily. But if we never get treated, if we never talk about it, if we never address it, if we never face it, how do we heal? And then if we continue, it just becomes just another trauma in our life that's unresolved. And how do we heal that? Let me go ahead.
No one else has put anything in the chat, but I think one of the other sort of the stigma that we hear is I did it, so why can't you? If I had $1 for every time one of our social media volunteers shared the screenshot where maybe a mom will put in one of the mama groups about, I'm struggling, or I feel overwhelmed, and then other mothers will say, oh, you're being too emotional, or you and then Lord forbid she says anything about having a nanny or having a husband or have a partner that's engaged, then there's really this sort of get over yourself, you've got more help than I had, or you've got more help than the average person.
Right.
But those resources aren't always what dictates.
Right.
Let's about that.
That's absolutely true. And and it's great. It's like, whoa, that's great that you have a nanny and you also are struggling. And it happens. And sometimes, if I have a client, sometimes it's like, well, maybe do we get a second one? Like, do we have let's get a night nanny and a day nanny. Like, it's important to be able to let that be okay. We can't, for our own selves, we can't look at other people and let them dictate for us what we need to do for ourselves. These kinds of trainings are so that we can look at ourselves and say, I'm struggling. I need help. It doesn't matter what mama says or what friends say or what Instagram says, or I need help and there's help available. So let me go get the help that I need. Yeah. If we allow outside to dictate us, we'll never get well. And it's unfortunate. And people, they're well-meaning. They don't mean any harm. They don't, when they say those things, they don't mean any harm. And if somebody who has not has not struggled with any kind of mental health challenges, they wouldn't know. They wouldn't know what you're dealing with. But there are people that do know, and there's help for that. So I think it's important to recognize that.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. As someone says in the chat, I always say if we can pass on family wealth, we can also pass on coping mechanisms.
Absolutely. Yes, I love that. I really do. I love that.
I
All
do
right. I'm going to continue, but I'll make it quick. I'm looking at the time. So I'll just discuss. So we have a whole strong Black woman syndrome, which I think I just talked to. Sometimes our faith and our religion interferes with us seeking help. Well, isn't God enough? Isn't prayer enough? You're not praying hard enough. You have demons. This is generational curses. And so we don't get support. We just stay there. There is a true and sincere mistrust of our healthcare system, with Black women dying 4 to 6 times more than white women. We have had a history where the medical system has not been on our side. Let's think Tuskegee experiment and things like that. And then for some mamas, like I talked about, the scary thoughts, when they mention that to untrained therapists, somebody calls Child Protective Services, and then they find themselves in unfortunate legal situations where they're at risk of losing their children. So that's a concern, but it has some validity to it. There are some barriers to seeking mental health, which may include money, or could include not finding the right therapist, or not knowing where to go, or wanting a therapist of color, and there just aren't enough of us. So I want to go into the self-care practices. We know that self-care is important. And when you're a new mama, it's so hard. How do we do that? How do we get those 5-10 minutes to ourselves? I love this because she's in so much joy. So we want to prioritize our rest. Rest is not just sleep, it's sleep, but sometimes rest is finding ways to get into quiet spaces where we can feel our own feelings and think our own thoughts. We definitely want to keep up on our hydration and nutrition. And this may be being creative with meal prep and stocking healthy snacks and nibbling all day long. But that's a priority, self-care. Food, clothing, and shelter. Food is one of those things. We do so much for everybody else, and sometimes I'm guilty of it too. I forget to eat, or I forget to not really take care of myself. And we really have to really prioritize that. We want to engage in some healthy, light, gentle exercising and activities, and have those moments of taking deep breaths, meditation. Some of my clients use a Calm app or apps like that, where they have something close where they can just do a 2-minute meditation, or listen to music, a really nice song for a couple of minutes. You want to set aside personal time, taking a calming bath, taking a walk, just having a moment of silence. Connecting and staying connected with friends and families with regular check-ins. Having a new baby can be isolating. We also want to journal your feelings and what's challenging, but also the joys. I mean, having a baby is joyful. So being able to look at that and write those things down, and practicing gratitude. We have so much to be thankful for. So one of the things that I ask my clients, and I have a postpartum group, is what fills them up. Like, and when I say that, it's like, what fills your soul when you're feeling down and out? And these are some of the kinds of activities that people have told me. I'm sure there's many, many more, but gardening, painting, baking, it's not on here, but that's some of the things. Reading, journaling, comedy or TV shows. You want to find the thing that makes you feel grounded and centered, and do that to the best of your ability as often as you can. Gospel music's another thing that people mentioned. I'm gonna just put all of these in because trust your instincts, mamas. Trust. I mean, nobody knows your journey, and nobody's gonna know your baby the way you will. So trust that. Continue to build community. We talked about supports. Our heritage as African descendants is rich. And whether that's cultural practices or family practices, let's anchor in those. They give us strength. So we want to be able to reclaim our brilliance that comes from our heritage. Like I said, you want to understand and know yourself, know what's going on with your body, know when something's off, know when it's okay. No, if I'm just tired, I need to rest, I need to drink some water, or if there's more going on, prioritize self-care and learn how to speak up and advocate for ourselves. I have an expression that I always use with my clients is to guard your peace. If there's anybody or anything that's in your space that's creating drama, and sometimes we like drama, we get caught up in it too. So notice that and clear your space of negativity. That's sometimes negative people watching CNN all day long, watching shows, harvest, I don't know, things that would bring you into a negative state of mind, gossipers, stay away from those who just bring negativity so that you can guard your peace. Argumentative people. So this is me, and I'm at the end of this, so we can continue to talk. For those, if you want to find me, here I am. And I'm gonna close this. I can put it back up later. So any questions? I mean, this is supposed to be a discussion. Like, let's talk. What's coming up for anybody? And I'm so sorry that was so quick. This is something that can be talked about for hours.
It is indeed. Excuse me, Terry pointed out that, and I'm sorry, Terry, I thought you didn't want to, well, you said it to everyone, but music, that sometimes the music that we listen to can give us anxiety or put us in an unpeaceful state.
So like some of the negative music or it can, or it can do the opposite. If you have some uplifting music, I know I keep a playlist on my YouTube, even though we have other things, and of things that calm me, things that bring me joy, music that just inspires me. And I often, have my clients put together like a coping toolbox that might include a tool, like I said, maybe creating a playlist of songs that bring them joy. Yes, she said I have to be mindful of negative TV. Yes, media. And listen, even those TV ads. When you're minding your business and all of a sudden somebody's talking about shingles and they're talking about HPV and it's like you weren't even thinking about the bed bugs. You weren't even thinking about these things. And now all of a sudden you're anxious, like, oh my goodness, now I got this thing to worry about. So yes. And I'm glad that you all are starting the awareness of it, because these are things we can control. We can turn off the news, or we can limit the news. If we notice that I'm watching the news, especially this last week or two, there's been a lot going on in the world, and it's creating a lot of big feelings for people. Turn it off. What you need to know, you'll know. And if you need to be informed, I often tell people go to limit the tea. Absolutely. I often tell people if you need to know the news, read the news. It'll tend to activate you less if you read it versus watching babies being bombed. It's, you know, it's, you get to be in control of that. Minimize gossip, watching the tea. Oh gosh, when you have everybody's got to get all up in what's going on with, what did Jada and Will do? If that is not benefiting you, let it go. It's not that important. I mean, if it's creating stress, I'm talking about, notice what's stressing you, what drains your energy, who drains your energy. Sometimes we have well-meaning loved ones, our friends and our family, but they call us and it's draining. So this is where learning how to speak up and advocating for yourself and setting boundaries and having limits may not be limits that you necessarily tell them, but if you know that you were feeling upbeat and Sally Jane just called you and now you're feeling sad and depressed and or mad about something, notice that. And maybe limit the amount of time you spend with that person and say, you know, I'm not really going to talk about that, or limit the time. Oops, I got another call. Oh, the baby's crying. I gotta go.
Is that not the best excuse now? I
Figure
mean,
it out.
for me, they're like, oh, Greg's golfing. So what you doing? You can keep talking, but you guys, new moms, you have excuses. And so no, and you can feel yourself getting tense. I mean, we know if you're aware of your body, you can feel yourself getting tense. I have someone that I love dearly, and this person sends me like news articles about all the bad things that are happening in the world. And it's like, I know you think I can solve all things, but I really can't. So why are you telling me?
Yeah.
You know, and it's after, and I can feel myself. And I was, and you probably can help me explain this one, Susan. What is it called? Highly sensitive people?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you for
Yeah.
feeling when other people can see it
Yeah.
and nothing?
Yeah.
Can we talk very briefly about that? What the highly sensitive?
Ooh, highly sensitive people are people that tend to get activated very easily because they're empathetic. They can feel what you feel more so, as opposed to seeing it out there. Oh, this is just something out there. It's like, no, it's something that's happening inside of them. And so highly sensitive people, if you are that, and there's a lot of books about that now, a lot of therapy books about that. Sometimes people don't say it's therapeutic, but it is. You pick up other people's stuff. You and other people's energy. They'll go on about their day and you're still sad or upset because of what somebody else brought into your space. Guard your peace. Then being able to limit that and you know, to the best of your ability. I mean, if it's a coworker and you got to deal with them, you got to figure out ways to limit that. Oh, I'm talking to you, huh? I saw in the comment also, which unsolicited advice, which I knew I didn't have that much time, but that is definitely one of the things that we have to learn to have boundaries with. And usually unsolicited advice comes from our loved ones, parents, aunties. So you don't want to hurt their feelings, but this is your baby and this is your experience. And sometimes people, they don't respect it, but they don't mean it. They don't mean harm. But being able to talk to them differently, or maybe having somebody else talk to them, a spouse or a partner or a sister or brother, and say, hey, you know, I love them and I want their help, but this, you know, this is my experience and I'd like to have, and I would love to have that respected. It's important. And it happens a lot. And it happens a lot.
Because there's so much that I think, you know, and I'm a grandmother, so I can speak from experience that I so often hear or see where young moms will say, you know, I'm raising my children, or I intend to raise my children. And it's not an indictment of grandma and what she did with raising the mom, but you know, maybe I want to embrace Montessori, or I'm a conscious, or, you know, and we're decolonizing the parenting model, right? And so it's not an indictment for you as a grandma if you just sit back and say, okay, let me follow along. How do you do? And then if you really, as grandma, if you really just watch, it's like, oh,
Mhm.
that's, it's so much the energy with that little person. And as Whitney says, unsolicited advice can be very difficult to manage because the family may have good intentions, but we
Mhm.
are allowed to change things,
Mhm.
parent differently. And
Yeah.
that's the number one thing. And my advice to expectant moms out there is have the conversation with grandma and great grandma and granddad early, non-confrontational, but for them to see and maybe share some of the articles, share some of the books that you're leaning into, because then everybody's on the same page as how we're raising this little one. And no, we may not necessarily potty train at 8 months, although you did, if it's causing stress and that sort of thing. But I think that's the big piece. And I love guard your peace, because I would submit we should start guarding our peace the minute they tell you you're expecting, or maybe when you're in conception, because because that stress can affect your right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. I mean, even if you're not, I mean, I use it with all my clients, guard your peace. Anxiety and depression, if we're dealing with it, we need to manage what we can. And so being able to look at what's impacting my anxiety, what's impacting my depression, and let me do something about what I can do about it. And some of it is just some changes like that. It's really important. It's hard to ask. I mean, it's hard to advocate for ourselves sometimes, especially when it's people that we care about and that care about us, like grandma and mommy.
Big brothers.
And big brothers, right? And big sisters and aunties.
Oh, I love this. Also, asking and accepting help can feel so difficult during the postpartum period, even from your partner, because our anxiety gets the best of us.
Absolutely. So that's one of the things we have to learn. Not only asking for help, like I said earlier, accepting it, because sometimes, and one of the things that comes up, I hear this a lot on the postpartum groups that I do is, well, I asked them to clean up the house, but they didn't do it the way I like it. So I asked them not to do it so I can do it my way. Sometimes we have to know that it's not going to be our way, and let it be okay if it's not as clean or as neat or as straight as you would like it to be, if somebody's offering help. I mean, if it's really helpful, sometimes people offer help and it's not helpful, but I'm saying they're trying to make a difference. Sometimes we have to let that be okay and understand this is temporary. This is not forever. This is just for a little bit of time. Maybe it's asking for help with having a housekeeper, or yep, mommy guilt. I'm looking at the comment. Yeah, there's mommy guilt. That's what I meant about part of the myth is that we're super women, right? Oh, I'm supposed to, here it is, I'm nursing, I'm up every 2 hours feeding a baby, but I'm still expected to keep the house spick and span, to make sure all the other kids are fine, to cook dinner, to do that. And it's like, no,
Right.
no. At least for a while, like for a little while, allow. And so what is that? It could look like, during the baby shower, asking people to send you HelloFresh or some pre-prep cooked meals already. Even though HelloFresh has great meals, but you have to cook them. But so maybe even somebody bringing prepared meals. Some people do meal trains the first 2 weeks so that they don't have to worry about that. Having somebody come and, maybe you want time with the baby, but maybe you have other children. Have somebody come and take the kids to the park and take them to the museum or take them out, so you have some time where you can just focus on the baby and yourself and your own recovery. It requires us to be creative and start to figure out ways that we can incorporate those things.
And I love, if we could spend just a second on that, Susan, because so often, maybe we live away from our families, right? So, and mom is still working, or, the grandma is still working, or the grandmothers are still working. And so who we have in our inner circle to help us through this postpartum period may not be your immediate family. It may be in your neighborhood. It may be someone in your, if you belong to a faith circle,
Mhm.
it may be someone you hire if you have the
Right,
means.
right,
But it may not always be uh, someone who's related to you. And I think that's something that we have to be mindful of, because with, the baby boomers, we're still working, and then our children are having children. And so not to feel bad about asking.
right.
You said asking your circle. I know I've seen with my daughter's friends where they didn't have immediate family, and they put a call out like on their social media that we would like help, and if you want to drop off food, if you want to, and their friends came in and did that. And so there are
Mhm.
cultures where the woman's only and I probably won't say this, my daughter's husband's Chinese, but in their culture, the new mom, her only job is to feed the baby, replenish
And
her energy, feed the baby.
and
And
rest. Mhm.
and there's even a phrase for it.
Yeah, I can't think of it right now, but I know. And they have houses. They have houses where they go to for 40 days, and completely are cared for, completely 100% cared for, so that they can recover. We used to have practices like that in our community,
Mhm.
where you'd stay in bed where grandma would come and aunties would come, and we used to have that. But life is different. The world is different. People are moving. They're in other. I'm from the East Coast. I'm living on the West Coast now, and I see a lot of people like that. So we don't have that. We used to have those things in our community. So I like what you said. Your daughter and her friends got together and they put out a call. If you had a doula, a doula is a birth educator, and just somebody just to really support. They can help you think out these things. So that's what a meal tree is. When you have all your friends for the first 2 or 3 weeks drop off a meal or come by and cook a meal or leave a meal, or some kind of way where you don't have to worry about that for you and your family, and you can focus on things. But oftentimes we don't understand what we need until after the fact, right? Like we don't talk. We're having this conversation, and all these mamas are already mamas. So it may not be the same. It may not hit the same as if you heard about this when you're 6 months pregnant, and you could start working on, oh, who can I call for this? And how can I put this together? And this is my plan. When the baby comes, these people are going to drop off meals for the first 2 weeks, so that that's one thing taken care of. Oh, this auntie is paying for housekeeping services for a month or 2 months. This person is going to do the grocery shopping and drop off, groceries once a week for 2 or 3 weeks. Being able to ask for that and then plan for that is something that we weren't really taught. We used to have it built in. It's not anymore. It's something we have to learn.
I agree wholeheartedly, Susan, and I don't remember who it was that it was a brilliant doula that said, you have a birth plan, why don't we create postpartum plans?
Okay.
And in that
Yeah,
plan, think through, what do I need for the first 45 days? Who can be part of that circle? And so hopefully some expectant moms are either in this group or will view this on our YouTube. But and that's again the benefit of a doula, because they'll help us think through those sorts of things.
absolutely.
And recognizing that you don't just come home and say, okay, I think we see it on like Call the Midwife, which is one of my favorite shows, right? So the woman goes through that trauma of her birth, and then there's this happy ending. But we miss that those little midwives come in and they help the mom postpartum. Go back to
Absolutely.
the shows. It's not like she's just sent home and on her own. So
No.
um
Yeah, and there are postpartum doulas that support families after the baby is born. So it's possible.
yeah, yeah.
It is. We do have to think differently though, than we would have. But we're having these kind of conversations so people know. And if it wasn't at this baby, maybe the next one. If you have friends that are pregnant, then you would maybe suggest these things. I know Postpartum Support International has on their website, they have a postpartum plan for this, where you're looking at where you're looking at these kind of questions, who you gonna rest, who's gonna help you rest, who can come over and watch the baby, who can help you do this, and they exist. And so there's ways to do that, and there's conversations around this.
And we have some links on our website to different doula organizations,
Awesome.
Dona International and others. If we could go back, kind of just a few more minutes, but and you guys tell us if you want me to stop talking, but something that you mentioned, Susan, that I'd love for us to peel back the layer on was your coping toolbox. What else goes in it beyond the music?
Oh, coping toolbox. Okay, so so music, any music that calms you, if that's one of the things, but writing down so that on the PowerPoint, I said the things that refuel you. So for some people, like I said, it's gardening or reading a book or journaling. Being able to write down those things, because when we're really frazzled, we're really sad or depressed, we're really anxious, we sometimes can't access those kinds of what can I do in this moment. And so you want to kind of create, and I usually tell people to put it on their phone, because most of us keep our phones with us all the time. Back in the day, people would have put it on a little index card, but websites that bring you back, motivational speakers, inspirational speakers, if there's a minister that you like or a motivational speaker that you like, and on your phone you can actually put the link in a notes section, right? So if there's a particular speech that inspires you, you can put that there. Coping skills, what works for you? Is it taking deep breaths? For some people, sitting down, calming down, getting centered is what works. For other people, that drives them crazy. Somebody who's really, really anxious is like, no, that's not my thing. So but walking around the block. Now, mind you, I understand these are new mamas. We don't have an hour to go to a yoga class, but some of my clients will find a 5-minute quick yoga thing on YouTube, and they'll put it down and they'll do it. They'll say, okay, I need to move my body. I need to stretch. I only have 5 minutes, and they'll find it. So you want to create the resources that work for you, and everybody's different, and you'll want several of them, right? Because maybe today I feel like sitting down and meditating, but tomorrow I don't. I feel like, oh, let me just go outside and sit out in the sun for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Literally just sit out in the sun, not even do anything. I'm just going to get some sun. And in that time, I might drink a glass of water. Mindfully, being present, not thinking about I'm just drinking a glass of water. Ooh, that water feels so cool going down my throat. Oh, and really being present with the thing we're doing. That's what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is just being in the here and now and just focusing on what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're feeling, what you're experiencing in the moment. And we can do that even in 2 minutes. There are 2-minute meditations. There are 2-minute mindfulness moments. I like something called box breath, which is breathing in for 4 counts, holding it for 4 counts, breathing out for 4 counts, holding it for 4 counts, and then repeat. And a box breath, that's why it's called 4, 4, and 4. It's something that you don't have to think about. It's not difficult to count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so finding those things that bring you relaxation and calm in the moment. And as simple as taking deep breaths is, people don't realize that when we feel stressed out, we tend to breathe shallow, especially women. We tend to stop breathing. And so taking a deep breath tells your body that it's okay. When we have shallow breaths, it feels like it's in fight or flight mode, which adds to our anxiety. And so we want to be able to be mindful and intentional about taking some deep breaths, just taking some deep cleansing breaths, because it calms your nervous system.
Oh, I love that. Well, do we have any, if we don't have any other questions from the group, I mean, gosh, I could go on all night. I want to, want to go back and do a review of so much that you said. This was beautiful, Susan. Thank you.
Oh,
Um,
it was my pleasure.
I hope,
I
I,
hope it was helpful. I hope that people actually walk away and feel that they have some ideas, some resources, some tools, and if they're struggling, that they have the courage to reach out for support and for help.
yes, that
That's
is
important.
so important. And don't let anyone, oh, gosh. Don't let anyone guilt you for wanting that, needing that help. We're all different. And
Yeah.
my thought is, I wasn't on the struggle bus, but I don't want anybody else on it either. I was one of those that was blessed to have mama in them. And so that's and it makes it so much more cherished, you know, that you can spend
Mhm.
with your child and you're not doing a billion and one things. Thank you, Susan. Thank you guys
Thank you.
for joining us. We'll have this on our YouTube sometime late tomorrow or early Monday. And don't forget to join us November 15th. We'll have a wonderful conversation called From Belly to Bassinet. It's a workshop on newborn care. And so we are so excited for you to meet Dr. Carol DeWalt, who's also in Southern California. If you have any comments or questions, we'll give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I see all the great comments saying thank you, Susan, in the chat. So with that, I will let us have the rest of our evening, and you all have a good night.